Cintas keeps your kitchen ready with ChefWorks apparel, reliable laundry service, and seamless restocking of cleaning and safety supplies. So your team looks professional and equipped for every shift. Visit cintas.com/kitchen solutions.
Welcome to Menu Talk, a joint podcast with Restaurant Business and Nation's Restaurant News. My guest this week is Lizzy Freier, Senior Director of Menu Research and Insights at Technomic. Technomic is our sister company at the Informa food service portfolio. Back in November, Technomic issued its restaurant and menu trends predictions for 2026. And I'm checking back with Lizzy to see where we are now that the new year is a month old. Lizzy delves into the impact of GLP-1 diets and protein on menu development and talks about the swavery flavor trend and where it's showing up. We also touch upon the evolution of texture as an important attribute in food and drink. And speaking of drink, we look at beverage innovation, a hotbed of menu activity, and see where it may be heading in the year to come. Limited time offers have also been a hotbed of activity, but there are signs that the surge in LTOs may be slowing ever so slightly. Listen to find out what else is on Technomic's radar and discover the trends that menu expert Lizzy Freier finds most intriguing. Welcome, Lizzy. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm excited to talk about Technomic's trends.
I am very excited too. Thank you for having me, Pat.
Sure. Well, I know you came out with your initial trends at the end of 2025. So now we're about almost a month into 2026. So we want to see how some of them are panning out. So tell me about GLP-1s and how they're impacting the menu.
GLP-1s is a tricky one, right? Because it's almost like a challenge for the food service industry. And there is still a lot up in the air as far as the impact of these weight loss drugs on food service. Things like regulatory approvals, insurance coverage, and pricing dynamics are all going to really continue to shape the future of GLP-1s. But what we know is that we're seeing more people turning towards them for weight loss reasons. And as a result, I think we are going to see a lot of operators starting to offer GLP-1 friendly items. And while we have seen a lot of operators doing this just simply by offering more small portion sizes or bites or poppers and using that type of language to appeal to people looking for just smaller portion sizes. We had some big news come out recently. Blaze Pizza launched a GLP-1 inspired pizza offering.
Yeah.
So before, really the only major chain that had done that was Smoothie King, which, that makes sense. It's a health focused brand. This was a ways back, but they had offered a GLP-1 friendly smoothie. So now that we're seeing it being applied to pizza, which is not traditionally seen as anything necessarily healthy, I think that something like this is very much going to pave the way for more operators to really start to try to appeal to those on GLP-1s.
So was that Blaze Pizza the one where they made it higher in protein, or is it a separate one?
Yes. So that was the high protein one. It had a cauliflower crust.
Right.
That definitely coincides with this high protein trend that we've been seeing lately, right? Because I think that those on GLP-1s, they're getting fuller faster, and doctors want to ensure that they are still getting the right nutrients. And, using protein, and protein is certainly thought of as a nutrient that consumers need, but one that also fills them up faster. I think that's why we are seeing this type of trend really go hand in hand with the rise of GLP-1s.
And do you think protein is going to continue to be a focus throughout the year?
Yes, I don't think we have yet seen signs of this protein craze slowing down. The fact that it's now showing up in coffee beverages as like protein cold foams at major chain restaurants, I think we are going to continue to see a lot of operators touting protein. But with any trend, I think there will be a time when it starts to level out. So a lot of discussion has been around, what is the next protein? I think fiber definitely has a place. Similar to protein, it falls into this evolution of health as like, what can you add to your diet to be healthier? And we also know that social media trends have definitely been rising with conversation around gut health. So I certainly think fiber might have a bit of momentum. I don't know if it's going to have the same momentum as protein did, but we have started to see some operators calling out fiber specifically alongside protein, like Panda Express.
Right.
So I think that there is potential. But yeah, I think fiber and just other functional ingredients in general, I'm not quite sure which one is going to have that similar momentum, but definitely keeping an eye out.
Well, let's talk about flavor a bit. So, we heard so much about spicy the past couple of years, and until everybody was really sick about spicy, hearing about spicy anyway, it still tastes good. But now Technomic predicts that swavery might be the flavor combo of the year. So, what exactly is swavery?
Yeah, so it's kind of that play on words similar to spicy, where it's sweet and spicy. So now swavery, we've got sweet and savory. So I don't know if swavery is going to catch on quite as much as spicy, but it's kind of the original mashup flavor, I would say. Sweet and savory, absolutely nothing particularly new about that as a flavor mashup. I mean, we can go back centuries and find sweet and savory mashups on menus. But I think that the way that we predict to see the sweet savory mashup show up more on menus is going to be different. I think it's going to be a little bit more nuanced. So I think that a big part of this trend is going to be seeing operators extend from simply like mashing up flavors to actually mashing up sweet dishes with savory dishes, and also formulating sweet dishes like savory dishes and vice versa. And a lot of this is going to also fall into kind of the global comfort food movement by incorporating sweet and savory.
Mm. I know when we talked at the end of last year, you mentioned things like miso, caramel, and mole. So there's a lot of roots in some of the global cuisines that are sweet and savory.
Absolutely. Yes. I do think that miso caramel is kind of that flavor of the year. I really do think that we're going to see a lot of momentum of that. And that flavor pairing in general is very interesting. You have the umami, the savory from the miso, and then you have the sweet from the caramel. And caramel is a very known flavor. Miso is a little bit lesser known. So you combine the adventure with the less adventure, you combine different flavors, and you can see this showing up in foods and beverages, also in savory dishes and desserts. So I think that there is going to be a lot of momentum of miso caramel. But similarly, I agree. I think that Mexican mole, Middle Eastern tahini, I think those we're also going to see finding new and innovative momentum as well. So tahini coffee drinks, for example, I think we're going to see a number of those finding a bit of momentum. And mole and desserts is another kind of micro trend that we're watching. So all of it really belonging largely to that savory or swavery trend.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I really like desserts that are slightly savory. So I would be into that trend for sure.
Well, and I think it really falls into consumers changing palates, right? I mean, different generations have different palates that they're a little bit more inclined to. So if you think about the Gen Z generation, they grew up with a lot of sour desserts. So having sour flavor profiles, finding momentum alongside that generation is something that we tend to watch. And so similarly to what you're talking about, I think, super sweet desserts is, something that's been common for a while. I think people are ready for more innovative flavors in desserts.
Well, that's good news. So let's talk about authenticity a little. That was also one of the trends that you mentioned in the Technomic report. So it's always been important to some restaurants, but how is authenticity evolving in 2026?
Yeah, and that trend was actually not even particularly relating to menus, but concepts more broadly.
Oh,
Thinking about like changing up your logo and making sure it stays within your brand positioning. And some restaurants have done that very well, and others, their customer base is not quite ready for something like that. But the way that authenticity shows up on the menu is very unique today. I think it really falls in line with this broader transparency trend that we've been seeing. Younger consumers, because they are on social media more, because they can research restaurants on their own more, and they want to understand about global cuisines, and they want to understand why a restaurant came to be. I think we are starting to see operators putting on their menus a little bit more detail about the influences of the items that they're seeing on the menu, or maybe where certain ingredients are sourced. Local sourcing or call outs of local farms, certain health perception call outs, making those kind of connections directly on the menu so that the consumer themselves then feels connected to the restaurant. I think that that's a really smart action on part of restaurants, and one that consumers are certainly looking for when they go out to dine.
okay. I guess I got it wrong. I really thought it related more to the global dishes. So thank you for clarifying that.
A little bit of everything.
And I not Technomic especially, but other forecasters that I was gathering a lot of reports at the end of the year. Everyone mentioned that texture is becoming a more important attribute. So are you seeing that happening on menus?
Absolutely. This was one, though, that I felt like a lot of the really innovative textures that we've been seeing, we had already started to see in restaurants and even in top chain restaurants over the past year. So if you think about this, a lot of it is happening in the beverage space. So if you think about beverages, a lot of the texture innovation is coming from cold foams. It's coming from boba, which has been a major trend that we've seen within the coffee cafe space at top chains over the past year. We're also seeing kind of flavored jellies.
Hmm.
A lot of that is Asian jellies, also showing up in beverages. And so I think that we have already been seeing that. I think we're going to continue to see it and maybe continue to see it evolve a little bit. So perhaps maybe some wild or out there mouthfeel experiences, like putting Pop Rocks in something. I saw one restaurant putting Pop Rocks on top of sushi. That was
Oh,
a wild one, but certainly adds a lot of intrigue to a
yeah,
dish, and
definitely.
one where it's like, you got to almost go and try it, right? So definitely a big draw for consumers. And also one that is going to play really nicely through social media. I mean, TikTok, you've got videos. Think about going to that restaurant and popping in a piece of sushi, and then you have pops going literally in your mouth. I think that there are a lot of really unique innovations out there. And I think texture is one way to do it.
Yeah. Well, I guess Technomic was way ahead of the curve, but others are joining in this year. And you talked a little bit about beverages. I mean, I've written a lot about beverages this year because they seem to have be the hotbed of menu activity. That category is just exploding. So do you see that continuing to track? And are there any specific beverage trends that you see emerging?
Yeah, absolutely. We are definitely continuing to see that beverage boom happening at everywhere from chain restaurants down through that independent restaurant space, and in adult beverages as well as non-alcohol beverages. So I think a lot of the trends that we have been seeing are going to continue to play out. So things like better for you sweeteners. So putting, maple or dates or agave in drinks.
Mm.
I think we're going to also continue to see things like dessert inspirations in beverages. So think about like a tiramisu inspired latte or a creme brulee inspired drink. I think we're also going to continue to see a lot of those global inspirations. I know that we already talked about tahini and miso potentially showing up in drinks. We've also already started to see cardamom and some really interesting herbs, seeds, spices finding momentum in the beverage space, especially coffee beverages. Also, unexpected fruit flavors in beverages as well. So if you think about coffees in particular, you don't necessarily think citrus or
Mm.
banana. But we've definitely been seeing a little bit of momentum of both of those items in coffee beverages. Umami infusions finding momentum in beverages, things like uh, fermented or pickled ingredients, a lot of vinegar-based drinks. And again, miso, certainly an umami flavor, mushrooms as a functional umami-based ingredient in beverages. And then lastly, I would say like new nuts. So, if you think about the evolution of plant-based milks, very much started with almond milk, I would say. That was kind of the first one. But I think that we're going to start to see a little bit more inspiration from pecan milk or macadamia nut milk, finding a little bit more opportunity as a way to provide a unique flavor profile, but another way to also differentiate in that plant-based milk space.
Yeah, we've seen some pistachio already, so that will probably continue too. And talking
Absolutely.
about dessert drinks, I mean, I'm doing my weekly roundup of for Trend Tracker, and it seems like there's a lot of King's Cake inspired coffees, especially in New Orleans chains. Maybe not. Then they're like concentrated in Louisiana, like PJ's Coffee just did a King's Cake coffee. So that
That
is kind of interesting.
that is super interesting. I mean, I think that actually plays really nicely because it traditionally has flavors like cinnamon, right? That make
Mhm,
sense in coffee drinks. I don't know if those drinks have like the purple, green, and yellow colors, maybe. I don't know, on a rim or something like that, but I can see that certainly
mhm,
looking really interesting and unique from like a swirl perspective. Maybe they're using like ube as like the
mhm.
purple flavor. But yeah, I can see that being really interesting. And with a lot of these dessert inspirations, right? Like they are flavors that consumers are already quite familiar with, but they're
Right.
just kind of packaged and positioned in a way that makes it seem like this innovative mashup that they need to try. So I think that that's the innovative part of it is the marketing.
Well, speaking about marketing, I mean, LTOs are continuing to surge. Do you see that trend continuing in 2026? Because last year saw a huge increase in LTOs.
We did. We saw a huge increase in LTOs once again. I mean, just the past 5 years in general, we've seen an uptick in LTO mentions every single year, which is wild.
Mm,
I wasn't sure if we would necessarily see a slowdown of the trend, but we did see 13% uptick in LTO launches in 2025 compared to 2024. But over the past 5 years, that's 134% uptick. So
wow.
pretty massive. So we are seeing it continue to grow, but we're seeing it growing at less of an intense rate than we had in previous years. So I do think that we are going to continue to see an uptick. But I do think it'll be a little bit more of a leveling out with operators being perhaps a bit more strategic
Mhm,
about their LTOs. But I think what we're seeing now is lines of limited time offers being applied across a lot of different items. I think that's why the uptick is so prominent. So if you take a flavor like cinnamon sugar, maybe applying it to 10 or 12 different drinks on your menu. So it's
mhm.
not like an extensive amount of new flavors that you're purchasing from your supplier partners. I think it's just being applied to more types of offerings.
Oh, that's interesting. So you started doing the menu morsels, I guess little
Yes.
write-ups. which are kind of fun that Technomic is now sending out. So in the last group, you talked about edible glitter. So tell me about that. I haven't seen a lot of edible glitter, although that King's Cake coffee did have like purple glitter on top.
Oh gosh.
Purple sugar, I guess.
Okay,
But
that would make sense.
yeah.
That totally makes sense. Yeah. And that is one where I expect to see probably more of that. We did see this at a couple of top chains, putting edible glitter, especially in their beverages.
Mm-hmm.
It, adds obviously that really beautiful photogenic, video forward, photo to a beverage, but really applied across the board. If you think about like a lemonade beverage or anything, certainly a topping on maybe whipped cream on top of a beverage, it just provides that social media driven innovation. Very exciting, very fun, and very light. A fun, nice, light way to add a little bit of intrigue to an item.
Are you seeing it on food too, or just in beverages mostly?
That's a good question. I'm guessing that it probably is in food. I think most of the examples that I'm thinking off the top of my head right now are for the beverage meal part.
So what else is on your radar, especially as, we're hopefully getting out of winter soon and into spring? I mean, I know menu developers are into spring already, but what do you see coming up?
I think that a lot of these kind of macro trends that we've continued to see, we'll continue to see operators iterate on them. I know nostalgia and nostalgia has been a big one that we've been talking about for a while. And I think that we're going to continue to see operators really iterate on that. So taking some nostalgic, kid-friendly classics, but applying it in new and innovative ways. I think last year was a big year for cereal-inspired everything, cereal-inspired drinks or desserts or cocktails. So I think we are going to continue to see kind of those twists on classics really in that way. And that is a trend that we've had forever, but we've seen different kind of pockets of it showing up in interesting ways. So certainly I think that. And I think another big one is more generally seeing trends moving into the mainstream much quicker. We definitely saw that take place in 2025 with Dubai chocolate. It came up very quickly. And I wouldn't say it's died down. We're still seeing operators rolling it out, but it certainly has flattened out at a faster rate than we might have seen other trends. So I think that just simply the movement and the evolution of trends has been a really interesting things to watch. And I think a lot of that is because, going back again, consumers are exposed to trends quicker via social media. They are really interested in watching, people make recipes and people talking about global offerings that they've never heard of. So then naturally they're going to want to see that applied at their local restaurant. So I think restaurants are going to get very creative in communicating with their customers via social media. So we've already seen some having them pitch ideas directly to operators or come up with recipes or vote on different ideas. And I think having that really interesting communication back and forth between restaurant and customer via social media is going to be a very unique thing to watch in 2026.
Cintas keeps your kitchen ready with ChefWorks apparel, reliable laundry service, and seamless restocking of cleaning and safety supplies. So your team looks professional and equipped for every shift. Visit cintas.com/kitchen solutions.